All right, let's dive into a video game genre that's, well, it's kind of unlike any other. See, while most genres just get prettier versions of the same thing over time, adventure games have this wild history of being completely reinvented. Their story isn't about slow, steady refinement. It's a story of total, radical transformation.
So that begs the question, right? How in the world did we get from games that were literally just words on a screen to the massive, interactive, cinematic blockbusters we play today? It's a heck of a journey, one that follows technology, game design, and just pure, raw imagination. So, let's find out.
Here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll start with the very first text-only adventures. Then, we'll watch the graphics revolution unfold. After that, we'll see how the action-adventure hybrid was born, check out the genre's modern-day rebirth, and then we'll wrap it all up with a really fascinating question about replayability.
Okay, let's start at the very beginning. Section 1, the first adventures. We're talking about a time when your own imagination was pretty much the only graphics card you needed.
This whole thing really kicked off in the late 1970s with a game called, simply enough, Adventure. It was so cool it inspired a bunch of MIT students to make their own, much bigger game called Zork. But here's the real key. Right after they made it, they had this lightbulb moment. They saw the commercial potential, and bam! They founded a company, Infocom, dedicated entirely to making these text-based games.
Now, at first these games were really all about exploring mazes and solving puzzles, but pretty quickly, designers had this huge realization. They'd stumbled onto something way bigger. This was a brand new way to tell stories. And that was the moment. That's when the genre went from being simple brain teasers to creating these deep narratives where you weren't just a player, you were the star of the show.
So you might be wondering, where did this genre go? Well, while it's not a huge commercial force anymore, it's very much alive as an art form called interactive fiction. It's become this really cool niche for people who still believe in the incredible power of just the written word to build amazing worlds.
And that leads us right into the next giant leap forward. Section 2, the graphics revolution. This is where we go from just words on a page to entire worlds on the screen. And I mean, this was a huge shift. Games went from being driven by your imagination to being driven by what you could see. All of a sudden, you needed teams of artists to create these rich, beautiful painted backdrops. And yeah, that was way more expensive, but the appeal just exploded. It went from a small, niche literary audience to a massive, broad market. Honestly, graphics changed the entire game.
This kicked off what everyone now calls the Golden Age, running from the mid-80s to the early 90s. And this whole era was just absolutely dominated by two legendary studios, LucasArts and Sierra Online. For a long time, they were making the best-looking, the richest, the most interesting games out there, period. They were exploring stuff, funny, scary, mysterious, that other genres just wouldn't even touch.
And the peak, the absolute commercial peak? Oh man, look no further than Myst. This point-and-click adventure was so incredibly popular that for years and years it held the title of the best-selling PC game of all time. It was just a mind-blowing success that proved this genre had serious mainstream power.
But, and here's the crazy part, the one piece of tech that should have shot adventure games into the stratosphere, 3D acceleration, actually ended up causing their decline. It's so ironic. The market's attention just shifted almost overnight to fast-paced action games, and the slower, more thoughtful adventure game, well, it got left in the dust.
And that tech shift, it leads us straight into our next section. Section 3, a new hybrid, action-adventure. This is the moment when those slow, brainy puzzles met fast twitch reflexes.
So what's the real difference here? Well, a pure adventure game is slow, It's contemplative. It's all about conceptual puzzles with basically zero pressure. But an action adventure, that's way faster. It mixes in physical, reflex-based challenges, and a lot of the time, it throws you on a clock with time pressure. You know these games. Think about series like Silent Hill or Assassin's Creed. Even the modern Zelda games are perfect examples of this. They blend all that great exploration and puzzle solving with combat that really tests your physical skills.
But this new hybrid wasn't exactly a hit with everyone. A lot of the purists, the fans of the original genre, really didn't like this new focus on physical challenges and being rushed. So you ended up with this split in the audience. The market for pure adventure games got smaller, while this new action-adventure hybrid just exploded.
But the story doesn't just die in the 90s. Not at all. That brings us to Section 4, the modern rebirth, an era that's all about diversification and finding completely new audiences for these kinds of games.
In the last few years, the genre has just splintered into all these different cool forms. Point and click found a perfect new home on phones and tablets. You got these puzzle-focused hidden object games that became huge with casual players. We saw simple, exploratory interactive books made for kids. There were even these beautiful, unique multiplayer adventures like Journey. And on the high end, you had massive semi-cinematic games like Heavy Rain that were pushing interactive storytelling to a whole new level.
Now, a key mechanic in a lot of these modern cinematic games, and boy is it a controversial one, is the Quick Time Event, or QTE. It was first made famous in the game Shenmue, and it's basically these moments where a button prompt flashes on screen and you have to press it fast. It adds a little reflex challenge to what might otherwise just be a cutscene you watch. But even with all this new stuff, it's really important to remember that the classic, traditional point-and-click adventure game is still alive and kicking in certain markets. The Nancy Drew series, which has been running forever, is the perfect example of this old-school style sticking around for its dedicated fans.
And that brings us to our final section, and it's a big one, kind of a philosophical debate for the whole genre. Section 5, the replayability question. Or, to put it another way, is a story only good once?
So here's the core problem, right? If an adventure game is just a straight line of puzzles, and you've already figured them all out, is there any good reason to ever play it again? I mean, the challenge is gone. On the surface, it really seems like a major design flaw.
So how do designers get around this? Well, one way is to try and build in replay value. Make puzzles with different solutions or stories that branch off. But here's the really fascinating part. The reality of the market suggests this might not even be a problem that needs solving in the first place.
And why is that? Well, because research shows something kind of crazy. A huge number of players never even finish these long games on their first playthrough. It's super common for someone to play for, say, 15 or 20 hours of a 40-hour game and then just move on to something else. From a business point of view, as long as they felt they got their money's worth, the idea of them replaying it is almost beside the point.
And this brings us to the last thought I want to leave you with. Think about it. We don't usually ask if a great movie or a great book needs to be replayable to be valuable. We appreciate it for that single, powerful experience it gives us. So the big question is, does a great interactive story really need to be replayable to be considered valuable? Something to chew on.